Good morning again. Second Timothy chapter 2 is a passage that it will take a lot for Jason and I to forget. We heard this passage over and over again. Verse 2, that was the theme, the mission of Sunset. Things you've heard me say in the presence of many men, many witnesses, entrust to reliable men to be qualified to teach others also. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for qualifying us. God, we thank you for equipping us, for helping us, God, to achieve your mission. God, to achieve your purpose. God, as we think about who we are and what we do in light of the kingdom, God, we think about your vision, your mission for us as a church, as a people. God, we pray this time that we have will bring forth some insights into us, and God, that we would see and come to know you as you desire to be seen and desire to be. We thank you, Father. It's in your Son's name that we say this word. Amen. You know, I was, as preparing for this sermon, like I do a lot of times, I listen to a lot of podcasts, listen to a different number of audio, video, whatever, just about thoughts. I'll read some books kind of in line in thinking with this and with whatever sermon or whatever topic it is that we're talking about. And when I'm thinking about in line of vision and mission, it's no small amount of response that comes from the search engine. You type in, videos or sermons on vision and mission, and you could go for a while. And there was a lot because we think about this because, well, the Bible speaks to this in so many ways. The Bible reminds us that we are on mission. The Bible reminds us what it means to be a people who live on purpose for a purpose. The Bible reminds us what it means to be equipped, like we read about in 2 Timothy chapter 2. The Bible reminds us what it means to be sent out on a mission. As Jesus sends out his disciples, as Jesus sends them out and equipping them and informing them and reminding them of how things will work and how they're not going alone. We see this, and you read throughout the book of Acts, you see the church on mission. You see the church growing, and you see the church going through different phases, but make no mistake, taking steps forward as the church began to grow and become what it is. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about two tests that we take. No, I'm not talking about tests in school. We're not going there yet. But I was thinking about the hearing test and the vision test. I remember taking those. I can honestly say I probably wouldn't pass as well as I once did with those, especially there's one word that I say the majority of my day. I don't know, maybe you're like me. I say this very valuable word. Huh? Maybe you might say, "What'd you say?" We were laughing during getting ready for VBS that as Harvey was talking about his character as the king, we were joking as he was telling everybody, when he was telling me, when they talk, everybody needs to speak up so I'll know what to say. And his first line literally was, "What's that you say?" And so we got a good kick out of that, And so we think about that. We find ourselves saying that word, those phrases a lot. And so when I was thinking about the hearing test. you get in there and you get the headphones on. If you've got to listen for a certain sound, that certain tone, you have to be really concentrating. I am, at least. I'm one of those that has to be. You can't have all this other noise going on because you are there for a specific purpose to hear a certain noise, right? So you've got to be focused on it, and you can't allow other things. Now, don't get me wrong, ADHD people like myself, we struggle with those things of focusing on certain factors that we're trying to do. Vision test. Think about the vision test. And it seems something. It seems so obvious. But do you know that you cannot pass a vision test if you're not looking at the letters? Right? You can't just say E. Everybody knows starts with E. I can do that one. And I did learn that on most occasions there are no numbers in it. Although I threw some numbers in there. Looks like the number 3, and my doctor said, there's only letters up there. I said, whatever letter you want it to be, that's what I just said. I said, okay, 3B. That's got to be close, right? But do you know that you cannot pass a vision test if you're not looking at the letters? We hear that and we go, well, of course. Think about that as those two things as we think of hearing and listening. We spoke to how the Bible speaks to, on many occasions, Old and New Testament, to God's vision and mission for us. And I'm going to make another obvious statement. We cannot know God's vision or mission for us if we do not spend time with God, asking those questions and seeking out those answers. We will find those answers in the Bible. We will find those answers maybe sometimes in others challenging us, others encouraging us, others helping or assisting us to kind of maybe step out beyond our comfort zones. But make no mistake, whether we experienced it directly or indirectly, we cannot understand, come to see, come to hear, come to know God's vision and mission for us as a people, as a church made up of people, unless we spend time searching, looking, seeing, listening to God. Are you with me? Following where we're going here? So we're talking today about the big picture. The big picture, our vision and our mission for the church. And for the last 3 weeks, we've been talking about different aspects of different makers. And really for the last 7 months, we've been talking about difference makers and different aspects of this. But in light of what we're talking about, I'm going to make 2 points that, again, the third time we're going to come to something very obvious. If you've been paying attention so far to what we're talking about, difference makers have the right vision. All right? We've just been talking about this and seeing those things, and obviously when you make that statement, if you can have the right vision, you can have the wrong vision, right? And so you can have all sorts of the greatest intentions, but there's a way to go about it, and there's a way to not go about it. And difference makers have the right mission. And I will tell you, those things cannot be separated, because we can't understand how to fulfill a mission. You can't skip right back. You can't skip over vision and get to mission. And let me advise you, you can't create a vision around a mission that you're already fulfilling. You can't say, I want to make, say you made, $200 for doing something. My mission is to make $200 for doing something. Oh, hey, I already did it. To make yourself, feel like you're fulfilling things in life. No, you set out to achieve a task. You set out and say, this is what I desire, and the mission is the product of the vision. The mission is the fulfillment, is the workings of the vision that has been put into place, and that we're actively involving, participating in on a daily basis. You still with me? All right, or have I just lost you completely? All right, if not, just pretend like you are and we'll carry on. Okay, so we think about this. We think about what God will give us. In Psalm 68, 35 says, God in your sanctuary, the God of Israel gives power and strength to his people. Praise be to God. So the God of Israel who gives us strength and power to his people is yes, the one we praise. But when we think about being on mission and having this vision and all these things, how do we fulfill this? Well, we fulfill it by the God who gives us strength. We fulfill it by the God who gives us power in those moments that when we look at that we have, when we say, if you want, big goals, you want, big things to happen, you got to dream big. Well, sometimes we look and we say, well, that's not usually happened in my life. I usually have small things happen in my life, and I would like to challenge you to maybe not look at them as small things, but as big things that are happening in your life. Because sometimes we're looking at things from our perspective because of what we would like to achieve. But think of this statement a little later as we look at this. Achieving is achieving. Fulfilling is fulfilling, and we'll kind of get back to this thought later, but that we understand that all that we do in the name of Christ, for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of the church, for the sake of the vision and the mission, is fulfilled because the God who gives us strength and who gives us power. All right? And so we think about these things that he will give. And in light of that too, in Psalm chapter 20, verse 6, he says, now I know that the Lord saves his anointed. He answers from his holy heaven with the saving power of his right hand. And when we think about this, our requests that we make before God, the petitions that we make before God, it says God hears us, and not just in this occasion, and speaking to this moment, and not taking this out of the context of it, but the importance that even though this may speak to this situation, God hearing and God responding to our request is something that speaks in every situation. It's something that happens in every moment of our lives. Present your request to God. Offer up to Him your thanksgiving, your prayers, your confessions, all these things. We present them to Him, and we serve the God who hears us. But here's the thing. We think about this, that the God who hears, the God who gives us strength, and the God who gives us power, there are two factors that must come into play, or that come into play in the midst of this. And when I say these, you're going to know exactly what these mean. Now, they may mean different things in your life, but you're going to understand the experience. The first word is trust. We all know what it means to trust someone, right? We all know what it means to develop trust, to enhance that trust by things that they've done and things that they've provided for our lives. But trust is what it is. It's no one says, well, could you define that a little better? We know what trust is. The other word is anxiety. We all understand anxiety. Some of us experience anxiety at hearing the word anxiety. Some of us, we kind of tighten up just even thinking about it, because we're speaking or we're reflecting back on experiences in our life of anxiety, of moments in our life. And so when we think of the God who gives us strength, the God who gives us power, the God who hears our request, when we experience seasons of trust and anxiety in light of fulfilling the vision and the mission that we have, there are things that we have to deal with. There are questions, there are moments in our lives that have to be answered and experienced to get from one point to the other. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, in the large town of Gustine, Texas. And if anybody knows Gustine, you know that's sarcasm at its utmost. That is a blink and you miss it. I remember growing up in Dublin, Texas. We were invited by another family to go to this steakhouse in Gustine. I loved it. They said it's in downtown Gustine. It's in downtown Gustine. That it's just in Gustine. That I think about that. If you're from Gustine, I'm sorry. But we think of this, that we go there and yes, I was, junior high age. I still remember pulling up to this restaurant because mainly they had to say, I was riding with our friends because I said, where's the restaurant? They said, that's it. And I said, that's it. I'm seeing this old rundown building and I'm thinking, I'm going in there to eat. And then we go inside, and you've heard the phrase, a hole in the wall. It literally had a hole in the wall to get from one section to the other. There was nothing appealing about that location. There was nothing that when I saw this building, I thought, boy, am I happy I came. This is going to be the greatest day of my life. I thought, am I going to need a shot when I leave here? You're thinking about all these things that we look at this and we're seeing it at face value. Isaiah 53 says there was nothing appealing about Jesus. Isaiah 53 tells us that there was nothing about his appearance that made him stand out. There was nothing about his appearance that everybody just flocked towards him. Hollywood, kind of feels the need to make him, whether attractive, whatever. That's something about him that sticks out. All these things. It says you kind of get the idea that in the midst of a room, unless you knew, there was nothing like, okay, there's the rabbi, there's the teacher. Nothing about his appearance caused people to come to him because it wasn't his appearance, and we'll kind of get back to that later. So trust, anxiety, that we think about these things. So in light of this, we understand that the God who gives us strength, the God who gives us power, the God who hears our request, the God whose Son came into this world as God in human form, right? Nothing appealing about him. He is the one who leads us. And so we don't flock to him because of his looks. We flock to him because of what he says. And if we think back to the hearing test and the vision test, we can't know what he says unless we look and see and listen. It says he will lead us. Psalm 37:6 again. He will make your righteous reward like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. The noonday sun is something I experience every Sunday. You know what this really means? It's rest. It's a nap. I look forward to my Sunday noonday sun. Right? That we think about this and now connect this to vindication. Your righteous judgment. You know what he says? You will be at peace. You will be at peace in the midst of this. Okay, so how does this connect to vision and mission? Hang with me one second. When we think about this, as we live on mission, as we live with our eyes fixed on the purpose that God has set out for us, we think about how we live this life. He says, great is your reward when you live for my purpose. He says, great is your reward when you live to fulfill the mission that I give you. And that when the world, like Jason said, when everybody said, why are you living this way? Why are you doing that? And we think about all these kind of things, he says, if you will listen, if you will understand that I will offer you reward, the judgment that I give you will leave you at peace, because when I judge you as those who are living for my purpose, your reward, your righteous reward will shine like the dawn. Will light up the sky just in the midst that maybe when darkness continues to be there, but there's that glimmer of hope. It's kind of, it's the exact opposite of that, when you have a door shut and somebody turns on the light and you see the light kind of creep out underneath the door. You can kind of get the idea somebody's in there, and so you know it's there. And it's just a little glimmer of hope. But this, it says, shines like the dawn that begins to fill up the sky. He says, when you live on mission for God, the judgment will leave you at such peace because you know where your hope lies. You know who you have trusted in. You know who you have placed your hope in. He says he will bring this about. He will cause this to happen. He will fulfill this work within you. And again, that vindication that will leave us at peace. Because he is the author of peace. Alright? So when we think about this, how will he lead us? How will this we've looked at these passages from the Old Testament, give strength and power, and we can sit and say, okay, well that's for those like David and Elijah and Moses and Abraham, and we think about all them, but what about us? Turn your Bibles over to John chapter 15. John chapter 15. I think in some ways we've misunderstood this passage, and if we think about that too, in many ways that can be the fault of myself, the teacher, the preacher, the one guiding us through these passages. But here in the last few years, I've kind of looked at this passage differently. So let's read John chapter 15, starting in verse 1. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. Alright, so I told you, I think, either maybe this is a me problem, misunderstood this passage throughout the years. Let me explain to you. I think so many times we are focused on bearing fruit. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? There's nothing wrong with being attentive to the idea of bearing fruit. But you know what this passage tells us? That our purpose is very simple. I don't know how I missed it all these years. Is to remain in Him. Our job is to remain connected to the tree. Our job is to remain connected to the plant, to the vine, all these things. And when we do that, he says, then you will bear fruit. In other words, if you want to be one who bears fruit, you have to remain connected to the tree. And I think so many times we have focused on bearing fruit. And you know, that the life of a Christian is all about bearing fruit. Well, the life of a Christian is remaining connected to God. And we go, well, yeah. Why do we miss that? Why do we not understand that? That's not a huh moment, that's a duh moment, right? And we think about that, at least for me, that I think we have focused on one thing so much that we've missed the beginning of it. Just like in order to fulfill that mission, you need vision. In order to bear fruit, we have to remain connected to the tree. So how does He lead us? He leads us into a life that bears fruit when we remain in Him. Now, is it easy? No. There's a reason why hundreds of papers are filed every year for 501c3 organizations, and 6 months later they're abandoned. As one preacher put it, he says, because people say because the work is too hard, it's too dark, it's too difficult, I can't do it alone. You know what? You're right. Because what we have to understand, in order to fulfill the vision, in order to fulfill the mission, we need something bigger than we are. Still with me? We need something bigger than we are. We need something bigger than us to be the focus of why we do what we do. I love how one of the podcasts that I was listening to this week, Chris Seidman, a minister at the branch in Farmers Branch, he says, to kill the devil, to defeat the devil, you need a king. And that king is Jesus. And when we think of the need for something bigger than us, we need something bigger than us to fulfill this mission. If we want to be aware that, yes, Jesus has defeated death. He has defeated Satan. But every day we go through a process of reminding Satan that he doesn't win. Right? One speaker says Satan travels at the speed of thought. As long as we think about him, as long as we are conscious, allow him to enter into our consciousness, that's how the devil continues to work. That we allow him to work through our thoughts, to work through our hearts, all these things. And so we look at this, that if we want to continue to remind Satan that he is defeated, we need something, we need someone bigger than us, bigger than we are, and that something, that someone is Jesus. Amen? And so we think about that. We think about that in light of the vision and the mission that God has called us out on. We understand in order to fulfill this, we need something bigger than we are. But remember, one of the things we talked about is, you know what? Fruit is fruit. Because I think sometimes we get caught in this, well, I'm not producing the same thing they're producing. I'm not doing all those things that they're producing, so therefore, maybe I'm not fulfilling what God has called me to do and who God has called me to be. Listen, as long as, just as we talked, the church in Acts was taking steps forward, I believe as long as we're continuing to take those steps forward, to continue to go into the direction, in the direction that we need to go, we will fulfill, we will produce that fruit in our lives, and we don't know what impact that will have on someone. We don't know the difference that will make in somebody's lives. And we may think and look and say, it's something that seems so minor, that seems so small in our lives, but it's huge. It's tremendous. It's extraordinary in our lives. Next week we're going to begin a series that is titled, Whatever. You know, heard that word, that means different things to different generations. Right? It's whatever. We're going to begin a series on that and kind of align up whatever is noble, whatever is true. How understanding that we change the way God defines a word. In light of this, in light of how we change things up from time to time, in light of how we maybe misunderstand, draw our own conclusions. Simply, he says, remain in me. Remember that restaurant in the large metropolis of Gustine? In all my life, that was the best steak I've ever eaten. I didn't know potatoes grew that big. And I don't know what all they put on it, but it was the greatest I've ever eaten. Now, the rolls weren't the greatest. That's Underwood's and brownie. That's nothing compares to that. But when I think about what I see, my preconceived ideas, I had already determined this is not going to be good. But when I experienced it, I realized something. And not only was it good, it was great. And we went back many times. That was a Saturday evening venture for the Hollinger family. A few times over the years. Matter of fact, to the point that we travel through Gustine going to church camp, and every time we drive through, I kind of look to the left, and I wonder if it's still there. I don't know. I told somebody that a while back, he said, well, the way you described it, there's a good chance the health codes didn't live it up, you know. I couldn't maintain it anymore. I don't know. It was great. You know, sometimes we look at what God calls us to do and calls us to be, and it's not what we had in mind. We look and say, yeah, but wouldn't this be more appealing? Wouldn't this be more attractive? Wouldn't this... But let me ask you the question. Is there nothing more appealing and more attractive than the Word of God? That simply just speaking the Word of God and simply relaying that message and living that out. Is there nothing more attractive, more appealing than that? And he says, this is what I've called you to do. This is who I've called you to be. And it's going to look different in your life than it will in my life. But guess what? As long as we are taking those steps in the direction that we need to go, guess what? We are a people who are producing fruit. We are a people who remain in Him and produce that fruit that brings about that righteous life that God desires. And hey, guess what? There may be nothing appealing about us. But it's not about us. It's about the Word that is planted within us, that richly dwells within us, that reminds us of the strength and the power that He gives us, that reminds us that when we're struggling, when difficulties happen, that He hears our request, that He hears our cares, and listens, follows up, and He is attentive to those things. He is mindful of them, and He offers us what we need to live in the way that He desires us to live. And another point, the way that He desires us to live, He wants us to desire that way too. So we may look sometimes and see, there's nothing really appealing about that. I don't know, there's nothing that just draws me to it. Have you given your attention? Have you given your focus? Have you, as the Hebrew author says, fixed your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, pioneer of our faith? Have you asked yourself the question, and this is what I want to challenge you to do this week. I want you to pray this prayer for 7 days. All right? You listening? Then we're going to be finished. I want you to pray to God. I challenge you to pray to God. God, how can you use me today? And then after the amen, I want you to look. I want you to listen to how God is going to answer prayer. And I believe, church, that when we do this, we will understand the big picture. The vision and mission that God places us in. There's going to be trust. There's going to be anxiety. He says, cast them all over. He says, trust Him. And keep producing that. Father God, we thank you. God, we know, God, that you call us to something greater. God, we know that you call us to something. And many times that is not answered, that question is not answered overnight. So God, may we constantly be asking that question. May we constantly be aware of the need to seek out the answer to that question. And God, may every day we ask, how can you use me? What can I do to fulfill your mission today? And may we open our eyes, and we look and listen, but may we go, and we take those steps and go in strength and power of your Son. It's in your Son's name. Today, maybe the steps you take may lead you to the waters of baptism. Lead you to that burial of the old self and that resurrection of the new self. That made alive in Christ, the old is gone, the new is here, Paul says to the church in Corinth. No, he doesn't just say to the church in Corinth. It's spoken to us as well. And when we surrender to him, we go in and we are washed away of our sins. The old is gone. The new is here. Think about that. We can help you.